Hello everyone, Brandon here with the Periphery, and this river right here is the Mississippi. And any picture you have in your mind of the Mississippi, I promise you it's not as narrow as this. And the reason why this is so narrow is because this is right where it starts, practically. It's a few miles from the headwaters of the Mississippi coming out of Lake Itasca. I'm up here this weekend because a friend's family has some land up here, some hunting land, and they've offered it to me a few times to say, hey Brandon, if you want to go up there, use the cabin, get some riding done. And I took him up on it this weekend because I happen to be working on a story right now all about Minnesota and asking the question, is Minnesota on the right track? Is it in a good place? And it's an interesting question. And this is a very appropriate place to do it because this is such a quintessential Minnesota kind of environment, right? This nature and this river. And just like this is the beginning of the river, I want to get to the heart of this question. And it's an interesting question because in May, Minnesota came in at number 4, I believe, in the U.S. News and World Report's rankings of the best states in the nation. And you think, wow, top 5 state, that's pretty awesome. And we are a pretty awesome state. We have been for decades. I've been very fortunate to live here my whole life. That said, this has been a very rough last 5-10 years for Minnesota. And we've seen some typically high measures of whether it's crime, whether it's education, and these things are starting to fall a lot. It's like what's going on? And the normal kind of unity that we have in this state is really starting to tear apart. So I acknowledge that, and I think most honest people can acknowledge that. So I ask the question, what's going on? And to do so, I start this is the headwaters of the Mississippi. We get to the beginning of things. And so I'm getting to the beginning of the question by asking, or by looking back in time, and that is to Minnesota's founding. And it was founded by a whole lot of Northern Europeans, Scandinavians, Germans, and they established this state, again, as a top 5 state, all of these great institutions and all these different industries, from business to healthcare to education to philanthropy. And it really put Minnesota on the map. And in 1973, we were on the cover of Time magazine because our state was doing so darn well. But in the last 50 years, it has continued to do very well. But again, we acknowledge that it hasn't been the same. So I ask, what's going on? And here's my theory. Minnesota ranks very low when it comes to our personalities' score on openness, right? And I think this idea of Minnesota nice, it being very hard to make friends here, us being sort of reserved and closed off, that's a popular stereotype. I think it's true. And I think for the longest time, it didn't really matter so much. It mattered, but it wasn't such a huge factor weighing us down because the world was simpler. It was less fluid and less diverse. Whereas today, it's more dynamic and more diverse. And we've got a lot more openness, frankly, going on that we are not very well accustomed to, or I would even say equipped to handle very well. And so we're not, right? We had the riots here. We've just had our Senate or our Minnesota House recess their session in some chaos on the floor and some yelling. And that is not like how we're used to doing things here. So it's kind of, I don't want to say coming apart, but things are loosening up in a negative way, kind of starting to loosen up, come apart a little bit. And so that's the way the story goes. And then it says, well, what can we do to tighten things back up? What can we do to get things back and stay on the right track? And that's really the crux of that's the big question. And that's why I come up here to write about this. And I have some thoughts around how we can learn from other regions of the country that are doing better when it comes to diversity. And then also how we might be able to leverage technology, actually. The way social media has undone a lot of the unity with, misinformation and groups, different factions kind of breaking apart and fragmenting. Maybe we can use this sort of technology to, come together from the ground up again. So I've got some thoughts around that. But anyway, the gist of it is that we're a reserved, closed-off state, which didn't harm us. That liability didn't harm us 50 years ago. It has in recent decades, and it really is today. And so what do we do about that? So anyway, as you can see, it's a beautiful state. This is the beginning of the Mississippi. So if nothing else from this video, you get a little geography lesson that, yes, the Mississippi does look like this as well. and a preview of the story I'm writing, and to look for it soon. Yeah, I'm working on the finishing touches of it right now, at least of the first draft. And I look forward to having it out there for everyone to look at, to comment. I'd love to hear your comments on the topic as well here. Thanks for listening to this, and I'll see you later. Bye-bye.